Okay, we're just going to recap the previous session in which we created a Swatch drag and drop system in Flash, which meant we could create a palette of colours that we can drag and drop onto an instance of a movie clip to change individual colours. So, how did we do that? Well, first off, we've got a movie clip which is containing the character in its entirety, every little bit. Now if we double click on that, it takes us into the timeline, we'll see we're in character complete. And we've got a head, which currently has no instance name. We have a body, which has the instance name underscore body. Arm, which is underscore arm. Leg underscore leg, and we've also got waist underscore waist. Inside of these movie clips, we have got an overlay layer, which is, if I turn invisible, there we go. Underneath it we've got a swatch, which we call underscore inner. That's another movie clip, and that is the target movie clip that we're trying to change the colour of. And over the top of it we've got a basic gradient movie clip, which when coupled with the display effect of multiply, it creates a gradient overlay almost. But if we change that back to normal, you'll see that it's just a grey to white gradient, and when we change it to multiply, it affects the colours beneath it. Each part of the body has some kind of gradient overlay like that. Okay, so we've created a movie clip called Swatch in the library that is here. Let's drag it onto the stage. It's just a red swatch of colour, a square. And as part of that, we've edited a class file called Swatch, which, if I just go to edit class, we can have a look at. Okay, this controls what happens when we add the swatch to the timeline using ActionScript. So we've got swatch, which extends movie clip, which basically means it is a movie clip, and whatever we do to it in here is extending the properties and methods available to a movie clip. So what have we done? We've given it a variable called colour, which is of data type uint, which is unsigned integer. We've then created a public function called swatch, which must be the same name as the class file itself, which in turn is the same name as the file name. So it has to be file name matches the class name, matches the function name. And inside of this function we have given it three parameters. We're looking for colour, X position and the Y position. So when we create a swatch using ActionScript, we will tell it what colour it will be, and we will tell it whereabouts on the stage we want it to be appearing. We've also imported the colour transform class, which allows us to change the colour of a swatch. So our red swatch in the library can become any colour that we wish it to be, and in doing that we've got this 3 lines of code here, which basically creates a colour transform object named myCT, new colour transform. We then change the colour property of that to equal col, which is relating to this variable here when you create the swatch. And once that has been added, we then change the inner movie clip of the swatch class to equal myCT. Now you'll notice a slight difference when we're actually invoking the colour transform. Colour transform has a small c, but when we're creating the class, it's got a capital C. So sometimes you might find issues with that version and where they belong. you would only use the capital C when you first create the colour transform object. Okay, and then we just basically change the X and Y position of the Swatch movie clip when it's created based on these values here as they are passed in. We also created what is known as a getter called Swatch Colour, and this allows us to find out the colour of any swatch at any given time should we need to. Back to the main file, there is an ActionScript file called main which controls everything. And if I just go look at this, okay, so again we've imported colour transform because we're creating colour transforms elsewhere. We've also got mouse event so that we can respond to drag and drop that we're creating, and this is called main ActionScript, and you see the same formation. So the file's called main.as, the public class is called main, spelled exactly the same, and the first function, which is called initiates the whole file, the constructor code, is also called main. And this constructor code is what runs the first time that the movie is loaded, and so anything we want to run at that same time is placed inside that function. So you'll notice I've created a function called init pallette, which stands for initiate pallette, and when we initiate the pallette, what happens is we take an instance from the library or a class which is known as Swatch. We create a new Swatch and we give it the colour of, in this case, call it red, 0 times FF0000, which is red, and that gets passed straight into here, colour there. We tell it to go to 250 in the X and 150 in the Y. We then add it to the display list so it becomes visible. We then add an event listener for when a mouse is clicked for draggable, and we do this for each swatch we created. So we've got green, we've got blue, purple, yellow, pink, white and black. So when we test it, when we test it, that code controls this. So these appear because of that control, and they are given those colours and those positions at that point. Moving on, as you notice, we call a function called draggable when we're listening for mouse event mouse down. So let's go to draggable, which is the next function here, and currently we've got a trace which listens for the swatch colour of anything that's clicked, and we've also got a variable called dupe swatch, which stands for duplicate swatch, which is a new swatch class, new swatch here, and then we give it a swatch colour, and that is based on the swatch colour of the swatch we've clicked. So if we click on and drag a swatch, what happens is we look for this, which is finding out the colour of the swatch that's being clicked, and that's related to this variable E, which comes from E here. So let's go back to function, initiate palette. You'll notice that with red we add an event listener so that when it is the mouse down on that object, it becomes draggable. But this part here is important. We send it the kind of mouse event to the function draggable. So there it listens for the type of mouse event, and this is attached to a variable called E. Attaching that to a variable called E, we can then access specific properties. In this case we're looking for its swatch colour. When it gives us its swatch colour, we can add that. So we create a duplicate swatch with the same colour, with the same X position again, so you see that letter E, which refers to the event that's occurring, current target .x, and same for the Y, so we reposition it at the point where it's being clicked. We then add that to the display list so it becomes visible. We then make the duplicates draggable, and we add a new event listener listening for mouse up so that we can drop the swatch when we release the mouse button. and in doing so, when we drop the swatch, we then add another colour transform to transform the colour of an object that's been hit. And then we've got a few hit test objects listening for if we hit the leg, then we will change the leg inner colour and the waist inner colour to whatever colour we've selected. Or if we do the body, then the body inner changes to the colour object we've created, and we also then stop the drag. We remove the event listener so it's not listening to be dropped anymore, and we also remove it from the display list so the duplicate disappears. And all of that makes this part work. So in that point, when we click on, say for instance, the green swatch, you'll notice at the bottom of the screen we've just got an output, a trace of the number for the colour. It has duplicated that swatch, it's got the same position as the first one originally, but when I pick it up we've got a duplicate. And then if I put it over the leg, it will then undrop when I let go of the mouse, change the colour of the leg and of the waist inner objects. Okay. So that is as far as we got in the last session, and we're now going to take that a little bit further in this lesson.